Hello everyone, or Sani Bonani everyone. My name is Ebony Tyson, also known as Tendegile Twala, and we're here in Eswatini, Africa. And I just want to thank you all so much for tuning in to our first ever roundtable discussion called Strengthening the Cultural Bridge Between Africans and African Americans. Yes. Let me say that again for the people in the back. We gotta say it again. Strengthening the cultural bridge between Africans and African Americans. And I am so proud to host this discussion and bring this to our viewers at such a relevant time, which is also Black History Month. Give me some snaps, y'all.
Yeah.
So for those of you who do not know or may not have heard of Black History Month, it was actually officially recognized in 1976, in which it honors the contributions that African Americans have made and to recognize their sacrifices. I know I'm gonna make y'all snap all day. We gonna be snapping,
but it's true.
snapping till it go. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of sweat, blood, and tears.
Definitely
right?
Yeah.
So the objective of this roundtable is to create a vital dialogue between Africans and African Americans for the purpose of mutually enriching, educating, inspiring, unifying, and creating an understanding of similar historical backgrounds, differences, and other major similarities. In addition, our aim is to educate one another on topics that we should know about and to motivate even our viewers to open their minds and their eyes to the importance of Black unity among everyone within the African diaspora, the realities of colonial systemic tools of Black division, and other issues to pay attention to. So we hope that this will spread more knowledge, more love, more healing, more forgiveness, more understanding, unity, loving conversations, loving conversations, and strengthen African-based relationships moving forward. As a disclaimer, this conversation is based on one's personal perspective and knowledge, so none of us here, including myself, are experts or have all of the answers. So please listen at your own discretion and do not judge others based on what we know. Please be loving, not judgmental. So now thank you. Yeah, give me some snaps for that. Okay, let's create that loving conversation here. So now before I go over the ground rules for our round table, let's just start by allowing our participants to introduce themselves, in which I'll go last. I'm going to say the best for last. I'm just kidding. So we can actually can we go this way?
Yeah,
cool.
No problem. So hi everyone, my name is Tandega Malaza. A lot of people call me T. I am an African Swazi living in Eswatini, born in Eswatini too. I currently am working in investments. I do a lot of things in investments. An interesting thing about me is I don't like dairy.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with that. Let's give her some snaps and support for that. That's not good for you. Okay.
Yay. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Kumalo Sampulu. I'm an African Swazi. I was born and raised here in Eswatini, around the Staweni in the Bombo region. Yes, and I'm a person who don't like to talk while I like tolerating with some other people, but I tolerated them indirect since a lot of people they know me as some K. Exactly. I tolerate you with them using the music thing. Yes, if I've got a message for you, I'm gonna tell you using a track. That's how I am.
I love
think it's
that.
all-
Yeah, I love that. John.
Okay, sure. Sambadani Bankos. In Eswatini, I go as Togazani, but in the U.S., I'm John. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, so I'm a Southerner at heart. I hold a degree from LaSalle University in Religious Studies with a minor in Political Science. I'm currently a Peace Corps volunteer here in Eswatini, serving within the health sector, so I help youth with HIV prevention and life skills around that sexual education. And then an interesting fact is that I'm truly an optimistic person, but there are some days where I can be very pessimistic to the core. But so far, it's been a very positive outlook since being here in Eswatini.
Let's give you some snaps for
Yes,
that.
yes,
Thank
yes,
you so
yes,
much for
yes.
sharing. So again, my name is Ebenezer Hyson. In Eswatini, my Siswati name is Tendegile Twala Shivagati.
Look at
You are no longer
It's
an
my praise
African.
name. Whoops.
And I identify as an African American. I am from Detroit, Michigan. Hey. So from the States. And I am also a Peace Corps volunteer here as well in the youth development sector. So I teach life skills at a high school, grades 8 to 12. And I also do community projects for the youth in the community that I serve. And I also have a bachelor's in criminal justice with a minor in psychology. And an interesting fact about myself is that I actually have my own cosmetic brand, Shades of Ebony Cosmetics.
Yes,
Got
yes,
it.
yes, yes.
Yes.
So that is more than just a beauty brand. It's an impact brand, especially catering to darker skin tone women. Thank you. And not just in America, but also in Africa, right? So this is just such a great time, and an alignment is just perfect. Just being in alignment is just a great thing. So yeah. So let's one more snap. They're gonna be like, these people just snapping all day. Yes, we
Definitely.
are. We
gotta
might as well
snap
be in
to
a
stay
jazz
awake and
place.
we have to be awoke here, so
You
snapping
know?
helps.
Right.
Yes.
Keeps us awake.
Yeah, so for the ground rules for our discussion, just to go over that really quick, each participant will have a chance to talk and answer questions given if you feel comfortable with that. Also, please respect each other's opinion and do not interrupt one another, okay? Just allow the person to finish their response. Remember that this is a friendly roundtable
Yes,
discussion,
yes. Yeah.
not a debate, okay? Also, please, it's going to be kind of like school, y'all. Please raise your hands when you want to speak, just to create that order so that we don't talk over
And
one
the
another
continue.
and we can all feel heard. Also, don't be afraid to share your truth and feelings, y'all. I'm going to be really transparent, okay? You are in a safe space. We're all family here. So we definitely want to give our viewers that, that raw information, okay? And please speak clearly and loud enough for everyone to hear you. We definitely want to make sure that, again, we're validating what you're saying and that you're being heard. So we want to make sure we hear that clearly. And you all are pretty good at this already, but give each other some praise, okay? So after each time someone shares their thoughts, let's just, again, snap our fingers so that we show that we hear them. And also, if there's a term or concept that you don't understand, please just ask. Again, we're family, so we can provide that clarity. And last but not least, enjoy and have a good time. It's all love.
Oh my
here.
God.
It's all
February,
love here.
February, yes.
Exactly.
You gotta have fun in February.
Right.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So let's just go ahead and jump into it. This is the way it works. So I am going to ask a question for our African Swazis to address, and then I'll ask a question for us African Americans to address, and then we'll alternatively switch back and forth with those questions, okay? All right, and then we'll have a myth and misconception freestyle session. Y'all like that? I know
look at
y'all
you.
Like that.
You're
Y'all
right,
feel
man.
that?
Freestyle. Come on.
Myth and misconception freestyle session.
right.
So that is where I will have each participant read a statement, and then you'll read the statement out loud, and then you'll choose someone else around the table to actually address that for us. Okay. And then lastly, we will close with our roundtable discussion with our closing question. And the reason why it's just one separate question like that, because it's very loaded. So we want to make sure we create space for that. And our remarks, okay? We good?
We're good.
Sounds
All
great.
right.
Definitely.
So let's get started, my beautiful black queens and kings, okay? I'm so
Yay.
excited. So
Exactly.
our first question for our local Eswati. Describe where Eswatini is on the map, and what was it like growing up in Eswatini for you during your childhood?
So should I like go ahead?
Yeah,
Or
you
do
raise
have-
your hand.
Oh, read my. Okay, cool.
We in school.
Okay, cool. So
Yes, Senega.
cool. So Eswatini on the map is just next to a very popular country in the south known as South Africa. Little landlocked country, just next to South Africa. So a lot of people don't even know
Mozambique
that
and
there's an
South Africa.
Eswatini. So growing up in Eswatini, I would say quite non-eventful for the most part. I don't like using that term, but non-eventful, soft, great. The environment is conducive for mental expansion in the social sense. So you have a lot of time outside running around barefooted, which is great for brain development. And you have a lot of time to access natural resources freely without having to pay for entrance. So that's the great part about it. It's like not very capitalistic, commercialized country as of yet. Obviously, there are other aspects about growing up in the country. So you have your social aspects, you have your political aspects, you have economic aspects. So my state of consciousness didn't really start about those other issues until I got to my early 20s. So I'd say growth is a process. So as I've been growing, I've had a different set of experiences and processes. But like relatively, one word to describe it, great. Wouldn't have grown up anywhere else.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love how positive it is. We
Yeah.
definitely need to hear that. Great. Sambulo, did you want to
Ish.
share?
No, nothing much. It seems like she has just emphasized everything.
Okay.
Eswatini is down at the African continent,
Mm-hmm.
next to South Africa and Mozambique, as she has just said. And it's a country which is, as for me, I was grateful growing up here in Eswatini because it's a country which is known as, it contains a lot of respect compared to some other countries, and we definitely know how to treat some other people and how to tolerate in a perfect way, you know. So I feel like I was in the right position because I know that there are some things which I shouldn't do maybe when I'm with an elder person. Just like maybe I won't be specific, maybe sharing some other countries as if they are just the cruel countries, but they are just some other countries as well. As for us, it was great, you know, here in Eswatini. So we'll always be positive by that.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing. I love that. Look, now I got to think about my stuff.
I know,
wanna be
right?
Okay. So for our African Americans, our question is: describe your hometown and what was it like growing up in your childhood environment in America.
You can go first.
You're gonna let me go first,
Yeah,
okay? So again, I am from Detroit, Michigan, which is like, they call it the Midwest, but to me it seems like it's more north. But like from where we have a place where in the downtown area is like Belle Isle, so you can actually see Canada on the other side, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Sure.
very
Good maple
cold.
syrup.
Yeah, so it's very cold in the winters, but yeah, so it's nothing like home, right? And we'll talk about the misconceptions and all of that. But most people, when you think of Detroit, Michigan, it's like people shooting people, being killed and all this stuff. But I feel like there's good and bad everywhere you go.
Yeah.
So there is bad, but there's also a lot of good. There's a lot of creativity. I mean, Detroit have bred some of the greatest people. I mean, you got Aaliyah, you got Aretha Franklin. We got so many people there. And Big Sean also, he went to my high school. He did go to my high school. Just gonna throw that out there. Yeah. And growing up in my childhood environment, so I have a older sister that I lived with. I have an older brother as well, but living in the home, I have my older sister, and during my early childhood, my parents were married, and it was great. It was nice, just being a kid, and I love how my family we were really surrounded around love. I think that's why I'm a very affectionate person, because my mom and dad were very loving parents, and we didn't have much, so I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. And we did struggle a lot, even after my parents divorced and my mom was, taking care of us. It was hard. We had times where it was cold, very cold, and we didn't have heat. We had to put blankets up on the window to protect us from.
Was the oven on?
Was the oven on? Yep. Had the oven open. Yeah. Yeah. So there were those times where it was very hard. And I honestly, looking back at everything, I don't take any of that for granted, because it shaped me into the woman that I am today. So, yeah.
Props. Mm-hmm. So I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. We're known for quite a few things: barbecue, blues, and our recent violence, I guess I'll say that. There was one summer in Memphis where we weren't allowed to go outside because maybe on average 2 to 3 or 2 to 5 people could be killed. And so that summer we didn't go outside. But my family, we were rooted in tennis and religion for sure. That's my background. But Memphis is a pretty large city. Represent that 901. Midtown is Memphis. And it's a historical city. With relations to the civil rights movement, to the Civil War, to yellow fever happening twice. And also there's a fault line that goes through Memphis too. So we have some interesting things that do happen, including the Mississippi River, which again, we have so many songs based on events in Memphis or within the Mid-South. But again, my family, we were a close-knit family, my 2 sisters, my mom and dad, and then my grandmother and her cousins. We were a close-knit family. And growing up in a Roman Catholic church and family, it was very interesting. I don't so much follow my Catholicism anymore, but it's still there. Catholic guilt weighs heavy on some of us, but we're here. But I, like Ebony said, it was rough for some moments, but we're here, and it shaped me into who I am and what it helped me make the decision to come into Peace Corps. So I'm very thankful for those moments. Tough moments, though, some trauma. But again, trauma shapes us into who we are, and you have to use that energy to really move forward and help other people because we're in this together.
Yeah. I like that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, we already getting into it. So our next question for our African Swatis, what does your surname mean? And briefly talk about your family's ancestral heritage.
Okay, as for me, because I represent Maswati. As for me, Liswati, our surname is a very, very important thing, because we grew up they've told us, we don't know, but they've told us that a surname, it was a name of the former members of that family. So it tells us who was one after another when it goes backwards, because we won't be able to know all the people. But the surname helps us to maybe open up the mind, know that, there was this person and there was this person. fine, maybe we won't even trust some others because they can't be able to lie and all the stuff. But we have to believe and trust what they've just told us. Okay, when it comes to ancestral heritage, we also, as for us as Maswati, we also used to talk maybe with our lost one, our ancestors and all the stuff, and whereby you are about to talk to those, you need to know the surname and you need to back them using the surname and all the stuff. They say it kupahla here in Eswatini, meaningly a surname is a very, very, very important thing, because you won't be able to do all the things when you don't know the surname. Exactly. So I feel like it means a lot.
Okay.
It means a lot as for us. Maybe Sisi can add something on that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Nanatelo, did you give a praise name?
Yeah, the praise name. Those are the former members.
Yeah, I mean, you want to share it?
Yeah, I
with
was going to
everyone?
ask. I'm sorry. I was going to ask you. Your last name is Kumalo.
Yeah.
So what is your praise name?
Yeah.
Oh, like Kumalo. Kumalo Mdungwa, you know, that Mdungwa zigothi mzilikazi ngamashobane. But they said Mbulazi. They said wena wadla umuntu umyenga ngendaba. They used to phrase that on a bad way, because it's like you ate wadla umuntu umyenga ngendaba. While isn't like that, it's like wadla uyenga umuntu. Meaningly, you were sharing lies to the person while eating. Not that you ate that person using lies. They actually are phrased it on that way, while it's a bad one. You know, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's it. Kumalo Mdungwa sigothi mzilikazi ngamashobane. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. I don't know.
Yeah. That sounds great. You know, when you think about, I think my favorite thing about the Swazi language is the color. Swati is a very colorful language. So if you hear, like he was saying, Umziligas Gamashobane here, is that your surname carries a very important part of your identity in our contextual, like, sort of existence, you know. So it's easier for someone to identify you with your surname than it is for them to identify you with your name. In Siswati, we have a saying that says, umuntu ulandzela igama lakhe, meaning that a person will follow their name. So if you're named and you're given a name, then you will follow that name. And a surname is sort of
and it's
an extension to that name. So if, for instance, my surname is Malaza, and my praise name is Malaza Nabonkosi, Mbulunga lelihle lasemawohlweni, nabonzabo divenga bani, divenga bomshengishabalala naboqotshonga emsilweni. So it's sort of saying to you that my name is Malaza. My ancestral name is Malaza. So like he was trying to explain that sometimes when you're communicating with the other side of the world, your name Tandega is just a name. It's the first layer. Yeah. But when you become recognized, that's when you use the second inference of your name, because there have been other Malazas that have existed before you. So yes, maybe there have been other Tandegas that existed, but where is the link of where you come from? Because we all have a history of where we come from. So the surname for us is a very important part of identifying who you are, and not just for you on a personal level, but also within a social context. So I'll also make an example. My surname has that line that says Nabonzabo divenga bomsheng shabalala, and Msheng Shabalala is a surname for another. It's a praise name for another surname.
Exactly.
So you also find that your cousins and the people you're related to are pronounced in your clan name. So I might be a Malaza, but I'm related to a Mabuza kind of situation, you know. So you'll hear a lot of people say Dlamini, Mlangeni, Nkosi, but they all come from the same kind of genre family because there are similarities within their praise names and their clan names. So what does it mean to me? I would say that my surname is a capsule for my identity. And when I say a capsule for my identity, I just mean, of course, there are other things that encapsulate who I am. But the first identifiable thing about me within the Swati context is my surname. It's how people know who my father is. It's how people know who my father's father is. And it's also how we're able to keep track of our existence through the ages. Because like Mzilika Matshobane said over here, you have stories that are told in those. You know, for mine says, she who has small feet but will build a great home. That's the direct translation.
Powerful.
So it's sort of like it tells you and it sets you up for sort of like the future and you knowing who you are.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, that's it. That's actually it.
I love that. Okay. I just want to sit and think about that. Wow, that was good. Okay, so for our question for our African American Peace Corps volunteers, we just throw that out. Peace Corps volunteers. What do you know about your ethnic African roots and heritage? Do you mind if I go first?
Oh, please. No,
Okay.
go for it.
So I'm actually going to provide some background information because, and it's very important what you said because it's kind of the opposite for us and what we lack.
Yeah.
For most of us. So enslavement, I actually got this from a news article from NBC. Enslavement, a centuries-long campaign designed to strip its victims of any essence, both erase names
Go ahead.
and severed family histories. Before emancipation, which was basically a time where technically the slaves were free during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that there. So before they were freed, those fleeing an enslaver would actually change their name to remain anonymous. Now, after emancipation, so after they were considered free, once they could formally establish who they were, absent of their enslavers' influence, many black folks chose the surname Freeman or Freedman. Others went with Washington, Williams, which in my case, Brown or Johnson, which is also in my case. Surnames typical before enslavement that remain relevant today. So some newly freed black folks who could read chose unique names they saw in newspapers despite lacking a connection to that family. Some even named themselves after aspirational black figures like Frederick Douglass. So therefore, most black people today don't know where we come from and or can go only so far because we don't have that original information to tie us back to our roots. We don't know what was our original last name. And I think that is... okay, I'll go on to what I think. Let me just tell you about me. So all I know is that my great-great-great-grandmother on my mother's side was actually Native American. Her name was Aaron Williams. So Williams obviously is not her real last name. But that's what my grandmother said. That's just, they call her Grandma Aaron. And she's probably from a Cherokee tribe. So that's as much as we know, pretty much. And I also did a maternal African ancestry DNA test that said that I had ethnic roots within the Fula people living in Guinea-Bissau, the Kru people living in Liberia, and the Mende and Timne people living in Sierra Leone. And actually, what was pretty interesting in my research, I saw that for the Mende and Timne tribe, or people living in Sierra Leone, it was a lot of people that you'll find a lot in America. You'll find a lot of people who actually moved to like South during slavery when they were transported to America. They a lot of people in like South Carolina. I want to say also it was like North Carolina in my research. A lot of them have were people coming from, their ancestors were coming from Sierra Leone. So yeah, that's all I know. But I think what we'll talk about more is that it's still that hole, right? That's still that void of that's not being filled because, and it wasn't our ancestors' fault, those who, were enslaved and they wanted to start over. You kind of want to just tried to fit. You're trying to figure out, okay, now I'm freed. You know, they done removed all my family histories, probably stuff that they brought over, if they could have brought anything over. You know, were probably lost or burnt up. We don't know. So, yeah, that's my take.
Oh,
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I will continue on your point, if I may, to say, you know, not only don't we have these missing aspects, but it was could have been separated from your family at an auction. You could have been separated from your family from the Civil War itself. You could have been separated from your family from the massacre from Alabama or Oklahoma or so forth and so forth, right? There's so many things, events that we don't know that could have transpired to our ancestors that leave so many gaps. On top of that, right, like the spoken language then for us, our ancestors, right, was it oral? Were they educated? Did they have the ability to write? We don't know. All that we have is the research that we can find, which is in itself a whole another story about how do you archive Black history in America, right? Like, what are the textbooks telling us? But I'll whole nother thing. But so my last name is Owens, but that's not the actual last name. The last name is Owen. So my aunt, God bless, rest in peace, Aunt May, she legally changed our name to add an S to Owen. So it's Owens. But when you research Owen, it's Celtic Welsh, so coming from Wales. And you're like, what is this UK name doing within my family? I don't know. But it's very interesting. But my older sister, who's also a former Peace Corps volunteer in Mauritania, she's done some of this research too. Not on the extent that Alex Haley or others have done, right? Because there's a little bit of privilege there when you have the access to go into these archives and museums to do the actual history and the search. But what we found that we have some really deep history in the South from my mother's family, my father's family, and even from our family on the West Coast. So, you know, we have bits and pieces that we can put together, but it's not the full picture of the full praise name. The other thing I really want to add really quickly is that not all of our family members want to share their history either. It's very unfortunate that I know about my paternal family, but I know very little about my maternal family. I don't know much about my grandmother, Honey. I don't know much about her husband or her previous marriages, though. I know that there were tons of uncles and aunts on my mom's family, and it dwindled down to 3 brothers and 4 sisters. Wow. But there was more of that. There was like 11 of them all together, total. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know about those uncles, those aunties. What I know is that, like, I have my mom and my aunt and my Aunt Betty that we still talk to, but that's about it. And we have history in Chicago. We have history in California. We have history in Louisiana. We have history in, I think there's a few in New York. And I'm like, what? Huh? Are they our last name? And then sometimes you only find out that you're related through a Facebook message, right? That's how we find out if you're family. Like, oh, who's this new person? Oh, that's your brother.
I'm your
What?
cousin.
Don't say anything, right? Like, it's all these other secrets that we're not supposed to know, but that's just some of the realities that we face when it comes to trying to get into that information. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
It seems like we've got a lot of things in common.
Yeah, and I wanted to add too, I didn't mention about the paternal side. I don't know where to start on that side. So I just know we got Tyson. I'm not related to Mike Tyson, y'all. I wish I was, because I sure asked for a couple dollars, but I'm not.
First day you mentioned me, I thought you were.
Yeah, right? Look.
She's a scrapper. She didn't tell you that.
She's a fighter. I don't know, but
You should do a research.
So, yeah, I should, right? So it's very overwhelming because you don't know where to start. It's like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. You know, then you have our elders, some of them don't know or have passed on. And like I said, you can only go so far. So it's very overwhelming to not have that information. So thank you all for sharing that.
Yeah. So as I was listening to you guys share your stories, there's a book I read, Homegoing. by Yakiasi. So I just book suggestion for everyone.
Okay.
And I got so teary while you were speaking because this is the history that she narrates in her book about Ghanaians being enslaved and being sent on ships to America. And in the end, in the book, she kind of contrasts two different realities of the sister who was shipped off to America and the sister who remained in Ghana. And you realize just how much, it's the intricacies of who I am and where do I come from and my identity are so deeply woven in all the things that you might not ever even know. Like, you were referring to about archiving that data. So it's a very painful and heartbreaking thing, and I don't think you guys have spoken about it, but I think people say it over and over again, but there is a real kind of separation of, okay, what was my original surname and where did they go and where do they come from? So just wanted to say there's a book that I think everyone would enjoy at the table, just to add after our discussion if you're keen on reading it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank
We'll put a
you.
link
Thank
down
you.
below in the chat.
Yeah, because we definitely need that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So back to our Eswatini here. What was your experience meeting a Black American for the first time? And what was the cultural differences that you saw from your first encounter? Yeah.
Yay. I don't want to lie. For my first time when you were the first Black American to meet. You.
Venus.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Some other Peace Corps volunteers were just white guys. Oh, it was white girls because it was only female. Only females I have ever heard in a male, just like Brachon. And Miss Tyson was the first Black one. And I thought he would just be strict because he will feel like he is not we will just disrespect her because he seems like he has our complexion and he may feel like he may feel unconscious and I was surprised when I get close to her because she was my teacher. Yes, she was my teacher last year. And when we tolerate with her, it's class and outside. And I said, no, this lady is not the one which we thought she is. And it was our great pleasure to meet this lady because there's a lot which I know right now because of her. Okay, I don't want to lie because even her, he definitely remember that she apparently let us travel on the workshop readiness college whereby we visit some colleges around Eswatini whereby we need to learn because in my community there are a majority of learners. They've completed Form 5 but they are just staring down. But not that they don't have brains. They've got enough brains but they don't know, they don't have the information that where exactly am I going to use my qualifications. Fine, I've got my certificate now. What am I going to do with the certificate? They felt like either or, you don't want to lie, either I thought if ever I complete Form 5 I'm done with this learning thing. Once you complete Form 5, I get the certificate, I'll then live maybe a smooth life. I thought that maybe I'm gonna apply there and there. But Miss Tyson, when she came, we were about ish. We must go and write. That was our pressure. We were about ish. If my paper is right next to me right now and I write and get this school thing off, maybe I'm tired. I feel like I should get rest right now. That's our intention. But Miss Tyson, fine. Truly speaking, we won't be able to appraise all the thing the information and the help which you provide to us. As for now, we will get to appraise it when times goes by because I didn't know that there were some colleges like this here in Eswatini, but I knew because of you. Meaningly, meeting my first Black American, because you were the first one. It really did let me gain something. Right now, I've got something inherent and I've got something in brain. Meaningly, right now I can be able. I know that okay, if my results are back now, maybe I can take and go to Limpopo because. And I can take to go maybe to Ecot, I can take and go to medical rescue, right? Yeah, I remember I can go to IDM, all the colleges which you visited. I know that what exactly do they need, the qualification. Because she know that we are from a place which seems like it's a hopeless one. Down there, it's a rural area and we felt like all this learning in colleges and universities, all my peers and my community, we felt like, no, it wasn't meant for us. Learning in colleges and universities, it's only for the town ladies and gentlemen. Those who learned in Bhavani, those who learned and St. Teresa, St. Michael's, Kapois, in that class schools, because it seems like. But Miss Tyson told us that the very same information we are learning right there at the rural area, it's the very same information they are just learning. The book is the same one. Yeah. The books we are learning is the same one. And we find it wasn't easy to adapt that. We know all those people who used to say that. Even our teachers tells us that we should be serious. And right now, I'm saturated. I feel like I should get more paper and write and get rid of books. That was the thing we needed by the time. But he used to encourage us, and he sacrificed with her own time. Just imagine, he takes some couple of months busy planning for the workshop. And I remember her crying.
Yeah.
It seems like by the time the workshop wasn't. It seems like the workshop it wasn't going to be successful. And she was very painful. But I began to understand that this person is a very kind person, and we were trying by all means to show her that we do understand her. We're gonna be patient because all these things need money and it needs a lot of things. We didn't pressure her. Hey, what's up? What? Because he just wrote the dates whereby we are going to attend, and split it over the walls. And if ever we were passing by the walls, we then read the date has already come, but we don't see Miss Tyson. What's going on? You see, it will be like he's just running away from us, while he is still pushing to let us gain what we gain today. I benefit a lot of things. I can talk up until the sun sets. I feel like we've got a lot of things Miss Tyson has done for us. I think I should. That's all I can share for now.
Sure. Thank you. About to have me crying out there. Thank you, Sambula. I appreciate it. And it feels good to hear that. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. You've just shown us. You've just shown us kind. So we didn't know how to pay you now.
You don't.
Like we don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sambulo, for that. Cece, did you want something to share on that question about your experience meeting a Black American the first time, and what was the cultural differences that you saw between, from that encounter, basically?
So maybe it won't be as fresh. My first experience meeting a Black American was I got the chance to participate in something called a cultural exchange program that is hosted by the Municipal Council of Eswatini in Babane. So I traveled way back in, what was the year? I don't really remember. But it was, I was in my Form 4, which is, you guys call it grade 11. So that's when I traveled to Texas for the first time. Yeah, so I was in Texas. And I met a few Black Americans in Texas. I would say that maybe before that point, I will not lie to you, I don't think I was conscious enough to be able to understand the split of realities. So before I flew to America, I didn't really think there were any differences between myself and an American. Perhaps texture of hair, access to like better education. But I honestly just felt like, no, you're a person, I'm a person, like, let's go, you know. So that was my thinking.
Positive.
So that was the initial kind of thinking, and the framework I existed in was we had some physical differences and like access to resources, and that was just it. And then when I started interacting with, I'd say, so meeting them was, okay, hi, how you doing? There's the difference in the way that we enunciate words, which is not just a Black American thing, it's a culture thing. It happens everywhere. So that's fine. The way that we speak, the way that we engage with our communities, and the way that I'd say they related to their white counterparts. Now, something that Sambulo alluded to a little bit, so when he said something about how you would feel as a Black American in existing with other Black people, and just like the level of thinking that they wouldn't take you as seriously. And I think there's a connotation there. And the reason I say that is because I think for a lot of the time when you exist in spaces as a Black African Swazi, or like Black African living in Africa, there is that inferiority complex that is kind of you gain, but just from experiencing and talking perhaps to a white counterpart. Now, I would say that the cultural difference that I first noted was there is a lesser resistance for Black Americans when they're speaking to their white counterparts. So you view them more as equals, and like it's easier for you to say, hey, no, don't speak to me like that. But it doesn't really happen a lot in, I'd say, African countries in Africa. So hasn't really happened a lot coming back. So that's a connotation. It's not something that's out and blatant, and no one is really like saying, oh, this is like a problem. But this is, I'd say, the first cultural difference I observed was, oh, there is some sort of hesitation perhaps from the end of other people. I think I grew up relatively confident with confrontation because of my parents. So they really were like, yeah, you just gotta fight. Like, you know, you're like, I understand you're sad and, you know, you feel like the world's unfair, but you just gotta kick back. So that's always been me, you know. But I'd say from an observational point of view to say that there is that kind of resistance of engagement. That's the first thing. And then the second thing I'd say I observed in terms of cultural differences is just the approach and the thinking to the world. You know, I think when you have lived in America, and maybe this is a myth and maybe we'll talk about it later, but like when you have lived in America, you kind of have this dollar and a dream mindset. You get what I'm saying? Like J. Cole speaks about it in his music as well. Like, I had a dollar and I had a dream. And you feel there's this, it's the American dream. That's what people call it in literature. So there's this, maybe it's a facade, but there's this idea that I can do anything I put my mind to. And I can achieve it. And I can really do it. And I think that's another cultural difference I observed, is that there's a lot of capped thinking when you exist in spaces that I come from, where the only thing you do know is as far as your environment. You know a limitation. You only know that I can go up to, like some people are saying, Form 5. And I can never do anything else. Not because you don't think you're capable or smart enough, but because your horizon of understanding literally ends at the bus stop. Do you get? So it's like, it's a thing where even if in terms of access and knowing things and having information, I'd say that was my second cultural shock. You know, this person's my age, but they already know so much. And I have to play catch up because I'm their age, but my thinking is kind of capped because of my experiences. So I'd say those are cultural differences, the small ones, of course, and then the like nitty gritty ones. But I'd say those are my big two takeaways. If I was asked to write an essay, those are the ones that flash out. Yeah.
I like that. I love how you touched on that, and wow, it really even opened up my mind to see that from that lens. And just before I go to the next question, something that you said in terms of that cap thinking, right? So I can say where I come from, which people will call the hood, you know. There's that cap thinking there as well. So yes, we do have the idea of the American dream, but it's so interesting when you're in an environment that has poverty or that lack. I know poverty is on different levels everywhere. I understand that, but in America, you know, when you're in an environment where it is poverty, where there is high crime, where there is a lot of lack, because it is a disparity when you're in the hood and you go to the suburbs where the rich people live, you know, and the white people and all the other races that have more access to that resource. Those resources, there it is that you do see that cap thinking, because it's like, well, I grew up here, and you know, I can tell you, I've known people that I grew up with that are dead by and my age and younger who are dead. You know, I've been in spaces where, you know, so the negative, there is some truth to that, where, okay, I've been in spaces where I went to parties and they were shooting, and I've had those experiences, or just outside and you hear some shooting, you know. And so those negative things and those experiences, those traumatic experiences, it does put you in a space where, for some people, they do have cap thinking, especially people of color, especially Black people, right? So I think the environment is so important, whether you're in Africa, America, Italy, wherever. The environment, if it's in a space where you're coming from lack, you're going to experience that, unfortunately, you know? And I think by design, that's what, you know, that's the point. You know what I mean? So, thank you for that.
Yeah, snaps.
So, next question. Are we on our African-American side?
Okay, sure,
why did you choose to come to serve and visit Africa? And what is the main cultural experience that you were hoping to gain from your first time in Africa?
Sure.
I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go first.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, like I said, my sister served in Mauritania long time ago. And so I was introduced to Peace Corps via my sister's choice to go. And then I also was introduced to Peace Corps by a Tom Hanks film called Volunteers. And that really set up a very interesting story of like, oh, Tom Hanks, John Candy, and a few others serving in Thailand. Okay, beautiful experience, American ideology in Thailand, communist ideologies in there too, but it's a movie, so it looks fun. Okay, sure, I can do that too. You know, the American dream, I can do anything. But it was also met with a lot of criticism the 4 to 6 months prior to leaving. And that's criticism that I had to accept, because they were like, why do you want to go serve in some foreign country when you could do that in your own land? But I've already done that. Like, I've done AmeriCorps. I've done community service in Memphis, Philadelphia, California. I've gone to the Dominican Republic, right? I've done what I thought was my ladder of opportunity to reach this goal called Peace Corps. So, but again, my intention wasn't just to say, oh, I'm a Peace Corps volunteer. It was to say, let me have a new experience of working with a global community. And Peace Corps afforded that. And it's not just a thing to say, hey, I'm going to go join Peace Corps. It's a tedious process that three of us in this room right now know it very well. It's not easy to become a Peace Corps volunteer. It's actually a real challenge that can throw you into some emotional blows. But I chose Africa was one of three choices. It was Africa, Asia, and South America. And again, as a Peace Corps volunteer, you put down your preferences, but that doesn't mean you're going to get your preference. And then when they give you your country, you either say yes or no, right? So again, you go at the will of your country. And I went at the will, and they said, do you want to go to Eswatini? And I said, I don't know where that is exactly, but I'm going to say yes. And I said yes. And then when I Googled Eswatini, I was like, oh, Swaziland? I know Swaziland. No stress, no stress. So that's why I chose. My intention to come to Eswatini, Africa, may have actually been rooted in the search for identity, right? Oh, let's go back to Africa. Let's see if we can find our descendants. That's the first thought, but not my intention. And as I'm here now talking to you and experiencing almost a full year of being in Eswatini, the intention is to really make the ripple effect, because we as Peace Corps volunteers have the ability to create grants, give opportunities, to showcase what else is out there, and also to really get to know the youth population that we're working with. Especially for me within Mbaga, it's really to say, hey, you have an ear to talk to. Hey, if you don't want to talk about sex with your mom and dad, come to your Maluni. Maluni, we can talk about it. Hey, I know you're having some issues at the clinic that the nurse may not may be approachable, but talk to your Maluni. Maluni will sit down with you and the nurse so we can talk it out so you actually can get the help that you need. Because so many times youth will come to the clinic thinking that they have a cold. It's not a cold. They actually have like a serious issue, sexual issue to talk about, but all that they can say is the safest thing that the nurse won't maybe get back to their parents or uncle or to a cousin, right? So they'll say, oh, I have a cough or a cold. It's not. There's something a lot more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
So for me, thank you for sharing even that process. It's very tedious. I'm telling y'all this. It took me 2 years to even get to hear back from Peace Corps about coming. Yeah. Gotta be committed to. All right. So why did I choose to come to serve and visit Africa? So this is my third time actually being in Africa. I studied abroad in Senegal for a month in 2019, and also I studied abroad in Cape Town, South Africa in 2018. So those experiences, especially from my first time being in Cape Town and just really getting that culture shock and learning about stuff that they don't even teach us in school, like apartheid. Like, I didn't even really know about apartheid until I went to Africa. So, and talking to women who, have HIV and dealing with those issues, but also seeing even the beautiful side, seeing the way that they during apartheid, how they protest through music and dancing, and it was so overwhelming because it was refreshing for me to see, it was refreshing for me to see that pride and to see it in such mass numbers like that and unapologetically and so colorful and so full of emotion in it. It was like, wow, this is different, and actually that experience, which I'm going to talk about in the next question, but just to lightly touch on it, when you talked about, John, like, oh, I'm going to come here and, you as a black person, again, from, not really knowing where you come from, you come to Africa looking for some of those answers. You come to Africa also for that sense of, whether we say it or not, for that sense of acceptance, right? Because we're not fully accepted in America. And, we the blind leading the blind for some of us because we don't know, So And you come to Africa and you're hoping to get that acceptance. You're hoping to get that embrace, that welcome, back home, welcome back to the homeland, and giving me some answers. What you think? Because, when you go to Africa, they'll tell you like, oh, your features, you look like you're from Senegal. You look like you're from Liberia.
You could be a true Swazi.
Man, I'm like, you think I just might? Give me some of those answers. I need something.
I need something, yeah.
You might know something that I don't. So, just all of that was very important in my life. It was an integral part in my life, especially being in college. I went to a historically black university.
Hey.
Go NCAT, okay, A&T, Aggie Pride. So that all just kind of helped me even look at my identity of who I am. Because, when you come to Africa also, and this is something that really stunned me, was that when I came, they were asking me, where do I come from? And I'm like, what do you mean? I come from America.
Yeah,
and they're like, no, where do you actually come from? Like, what is your, that ancestral lineage?
What is your praise name?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. And they were looking at me so confused and like, kind of like, girl, like, you should know this, kind of,
Yo.
And it made me feel embarrassed because I'm like, wow, I never even thought about that. So that made me go on that journey of finding myself and also looking at myself in a different view. Like, okay, I'm not just an African American. I'm not just this label. There's so much deeper that comes from that. I mean, I got royalty in my blood. Let me figure out where that comes. Where is that? What is that? So it also made me feel responsible as well. Seeing people who look like me, who are, in these spaces, who are, living in poverty. And, I don't know, I just feel responsible that I'm supposed to do something that will enrich all of us. It made me, it fired me up too. And it made me want to go back home and educate black people at home about the issues that are happening here. And why aren't more of us coming here? Why aren't more of us trying to work together and strengthen that bridge, so that we can all be powerful? Why are we just so divided? This was never the way it was supposed to be. So I can go on and on about that. But also, I plan to open up my own nonprofit organization for juvenile. Thank you. For juveniles and at-risk youth on a global scale. So especially and cater toward African Americans and Africans. It's catered toward juveniles and at-risk youth. So just helping to build that Gutatemba, Gutatanza, that self-love, that self-confidence, and also just empowering the youth to be their best selves, no matter where you come from, no matter what you've experienced, So that is the reason why I'm here.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank
one
you.
time.
So, wow, this is so much amazing. I'm just so excited. My cheeks over here hurting because I'm just smiling so much. It's just So, for our next question for our Eswatini, what is an Umlungu, and why do you also call Black Americans Umlungu?
Oh.
It's going to be an interesting chat.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently, you guys, the only reason why we also call Black Americans Umlungu, Umlungu is a white man, actually. Okay, not only a white man, but according to our mindset, we are stereotyped that Umlungu, it's a person who is from overseas. So the reason why we also call Black Americans Umlungu, it's just that you come on a way whereby the also white men come like because you come you come as a Peace Corps volunteer, and will then easily clarify you as if you are in Umlungu, because most of the Peace Corps volunteers, it's being the white men. So we then also call you Umlungu because you also come just like the white man. And I know that Miss Tyson doesn't really like that name. I know for a fact.
Yeah.
I know for a fact. I remember that day when we were from school after sorting the papers right there at the billboard, and there was another guy which I know, and when he met me, he said, hey kambanjani, and I say, yeah, kambanjani, awungiphela umlungu. And Miss Tyson said, who is Umlungu? I'm not a Mlungu. You can't you see that my black is black as yours, like yours? And and I was amazed because he was supposed to be like he was supposed to be patient and to just accept that maybe I'm in Umlungu because I'm from overseas, and I'm pretty sure that they are going to describe me just like that. But he don't feel like we should call her Umlungu. And I clearly understand right now. Umlungu means it's not you. Yeah, you are not Umlungu.
I don't see no Umlungu nowhere. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason why we end up calling Black Americans Umlungu. We are just trying to easily clarify you guys.
Yeah.
Not that it's an insult or just that it's just that we are trying to easily describe you just like the others. I don't know, maybe she can add something.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Clarifying that. Yeah.
I love that, and the reason why I love Sambula's explanation is because he speaks about intent and effect, right?
Yeah.
And you see, a lot of the time when someone says Umlungu, well, the only reason I just have a problem with the way the whole statement, like, you know, like awungiphe Umlungu, basically meaning please give me that white person. It's like, you know, that language I don't really appreciate because I mean I'm my own person, so you can't get me. Like, but anyway, personal. Yeah. So Umlungu, another actually explanation of Umlungu is someone who is your boss.
Exactly.
So that's why I say it's so interesting, because it's going to be an interesting chat, because it then again goes back to the like inferiority complex, superiority complex dynamic that you have there, right? So intent and effect, when you are in an environment where someone is saying nangumlung, so meaning here comes the white man, or it can mean here comes your boss, or here comes the person with the most money in the room. So it's a pregnant statement. So it can mean a variety of different things, but in the context of this conversation, it obviously is referring to, I'd say the most part where you hear it is them referring to you as perhaps the class of, let's say, white men coming from America, kind of thing. So I think it's another, I'd say, to myself personally as Tandega, Umlungu, I would say, is just simply a white person. That's the context that I use it in all the time. But also, it's not an offensive word, right? Like the word Umlungu is merely, in the Swati language, a description of a person being white, you know, like, so again, in the book that I read, Yak Yas' Homegoing, one of the things that she says is the obsession to describe things and to label them as good or bad came from the Christianization of the Ghanaian nation at the time. So even with this distinction and changing and labeling of people, it comes from that heavy Christianization and that model to say things must be defined. So I must say, I can't say simply that a person walked through the door, you know, because the Swati language in and of itself is very gender non-conforming, right? So you'll never say, in our language you can say bangene mnyango mama wangene mnyango. There's no gender conformity there. In fact, there isn't even a description of what you look like, because our language is very accommodative of who you are, and we respect the essence of a person. But with the introduction of the English language that rolls off our mother tongues, we needed to start classifying things. So is this cup black or white? It's white. The phone is black. You know, everything had to be described. Is it good to marry one wife? Is it bad? Is it terrible to drink beer on a Sunday? Is it great? You know, there has to be that distinction to describe behavior, which never existed before. So I would say it's kind of like an off-put and like an outcome of slavery and all its architecture. So everything that came with slavery then resulted to the change of language, and hence then how we address each other, which is why also you feel disrespected when someone says that to you, because even though you don't identify with it, there is a inherent need for that person on a cognitive level to classify you, because that's what they've been doing their entire lives. So I'd say, I mean, yes, intent, effect, two different things, but also, you know, very pregnant statement. And lastly, I don't think it's meant to be offensive. And, you know, the outcome is based on our history as well.
Thank you for sharing that.
No, that's
Such a great
fantastic.
speech.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
Can I go?
Go for it, sis. I'm like charged. I'm ready. I was like, huh.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that, both of you. For us, to piggyback off of that, our question is, how do you feel when local Swazi call you Umlungu? And do you feel like your identity with the term when local Swazis call you Umlungu? I'm sorry, do you feel that you identify with the term when they call you Umlungu? Why or why not? Well, he already kind of introduced how I felt, but I guess I am offended because again, when we come, okay, let me tell you the beginning. Let's start from the beginning.
Do we have the time?
Yeah, we got the time.
I don't know.
We got the time. Okay. So when I went to Cape Town, you know, we had this event where we were doing this cultural thing, and we went to the townships. Don't ask me why, but we went to the townships because anyone who've been to South Africa know, like, okay, you have this big disparity. You got a whole bunch of white people or other races who are you know, well off. You've seen them in these nice homes, driving these nice cars, and then you go a little bit further out of that touristy area in Cape Town, and you see these people living in townships in this horrible, you know, it's like real poverty, you know, and it's very unsettling, especially coming from a black person. Like, being there, you're like, wait a minute, this is messed up, especially because in Africa, the majority is black and the minorities are white. And then in America, the minorities are, you know, people of color, and also the majority is white. So also just mentally, you're changing that mindset of, okay, here the minorities are the rich people and the majorities are the people who are, you know,
The natives.
Yeah, the natives are the ones who are, you know, at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of economic status. And so I went to this cultural thing, and I was expecting to be embraced. I'm like, it's only about 4 black people that's in it. It's a whole bunch of other white kids who are in the study abroad group. And I'm expecting to be embraced. I'm seeing the kids. I'm like, yeah, come on, y'all. No, that it didn't happen like that. So they went straight to the white people. They embraced them first. And, you know, they were calling me white as well. That's the first time I was heard white, and I had to check myself, like, what are they talking about? And I had to ask people, like, you know, what that meant. Of course, we're learning, you know, that meant, like, you're privileged and all of those things. But, yeah, I didn't get that embrace that I was expecting, and it was really traumatic for me, actually. And I didn't realize that until I came back here, that it was traumatic. So, because it's like when you go and visit a family, right? Let's say I go and visit my family I haven't seen in a long time, and I bring a friend with me, and I come and I see them and they embrace my friend before they embrace me. You're like, dang, what about me? You know, like, we're supposed to be family. What about me? And then you start feeling like you're not enough, you know, in terms of, okay, I feel like I'm not enough in America. Then we got, you know, problems with even people in our you know, with other black people, right? And then you come here and you expecting to be embraced, and then you got these problems and you're still being put in this box. It's like, dang, I don't fit here and I don't fit here. And so when I'm called Umlungu here, I feel like I'm being put in a box again, because it's like, you're not taking the time to really get to know me, you know, to know in reality, I don't come from privilege. I don't come from a silver spoon. And I feel like it creates a division. Again, it's creating this division, right? What you were saying in terms of that, coming from slavery, coming from that, that mentality, it because it makes me not want to deal with you. Like that time me and Sambulo talking about, it's like, dang, I don't want to run into that man again because he don't call me Umlungu again. I don't want to, engage now because now I know you're putting me in a box. Now I know that more than likely your thinking is not going to go beyond what I tell you because you already have your idea of what you think I am. Which, yes, it's just unfortunate because, and I know the intent doesn't really mean that you're being offensive, but that connotation, right, that you were talking about, that's just how I'm feeling. And I'm already on the fence because of the traumatic experience I've already had, and it even goes as deep into, when I'm out with like my white counterparts or whatever, I feel like I'm already about to be classified in this way. You don't even see me as an individual. Now you see me with a white person, so you're going to still call me Umlungu and put me in this box, So, yeah, it's just unsettling for me.
Marked by association.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So.
right. Yeah.
And I would agree with you. I think coming from the South, I am hypersensitive about being called white. And funny enough that even in Mbaga, people make fun of my skin tone. So, like, I'm actually showing 3 shades of brown on me right now because of how the sun is loving me in Eswatini. But if I was back in the U.S. and it's winter and it's February right now, I would be a little bit more brighter, like very bright. And so people would be like, "Oh yeah, he is white." Be like, "Or you're mixed," or "Who in your family is white?" And I'm like, "Nigga, no one. No, my mom is black, my dad is black, but my mom is lighter skinned than me. My sister almost looks Asian, so we always had a joke with her. But being called white, I go like that, and I'm like, who, where, huh? What do you mean? I'm not. And so sometimes I will shut it down and say, if you call me white, I'm going to walk away from the conversation. And in that way, at least they can say, oh, he is not white, he's black, or he's something else. And then they will continue to engage. But sometimes I still feel like they only want to engage me because I come with something of the boss aspect of, oh, he comes with money. And I'm like, and that it's really made me be a bit more intentional of who I work with, or who I'm talking to, because I want to make sure that if we're working together, it doesn't benefit you, the older Mswati here in Mbaga or in Big Ben, but it benefits the youth within Mbaga. And so it's so that's how I try to make sure that the conversations of who I'm working with really see me as, oh, that's Togazani, the Black American. But yeah, it's a hypersensitivity. And when I explain to folks about my parents, they're like, tell us more. And that's why it's the praise thing that really sets me off, that like, no, we don't have a praise name to tell you where we come from. Like if I had a praise name to tell you that my mom comes from Louisiana, plus the history of Louisiana, the Creole influence, the French influence, the Spanish influence, the British influence, and then whether you're coming from California, the Spanish influence there, or the Mexican influence there. So it's hard to identify my skin tone with my name when I don't know that. All I can tell you is, hi, I'm John, I'm black, but I'm actually brown, right? And so like the struggle for black and brown folks to really find their identity is always going to be a struggle, because all we can say is, I'm an American. And I think James Baldwin really makes it clear that black Americans, so I'm going to use black Americans. I'm just going to use black Americans because there's a difficulty for us to identify or express our identity because of all the things that we feel constantly in the U.S.
Yeah.
Whether it's the police, whether it's affirmative action, whether it's going back on on gender roles, or whether it's even medical access for black women or for black males. It all compensates our identity and how we've been mistreated. And so that's why for me, like when I'm called white, it's a trigger.
It is.
It's a trigger.
Yeah.
But I know that, but I'm so glad that you are here with us
Yeah.
today to really explain, like, hey, calm down.
Yeah.
Because again, it really, like in the US right now, there could be 50 of us to just jump on you for making that statement.
Yeah.
But again, in this small space, we can have this dialogue, be like, oh, great, thank you so much. But let me tell you from our perspective, like, white means this to us. And even from, like, she's from Detroit, that's a whole different context of being called white. But from the South, knowing the slave history, knowing the racial mentality that my father went through, the Men's March, the inspiration that MLK led in Memphis and other great cities like that, we all have a different context of what it means to be called white or being associated with white. And how, like, we get judged for that too. Oh, you hang out with those white people, John. Oh, you talk white. Oh, look at you talking the King's English. I'm so sorry. Let me speak Ebonics for you real quick, right? Like, will that make my black heart even better for you? So it's a complex thing to say, like, I'm to call me white, because I'm like, I'm not. You know, like, how more can I do I need to wear my Chucks? Do I need to wear my Timberland? Do I need to wear baggy pants? Do I need to wear a baseball hat? Do I need to wear a tank top with a gold chain? Do I need to look like a gangster? Do I need to look like 50 Cent? Do I need to look like what do I need to do to prove my blackness to you? And so it's hard. But I'm very happy by just being called the Black American, because at least that way I'm distinct and I have my own history there.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
That was powerful.
Yeah.
And again, that you expressing it just had me, like, inside feeling like that anxiety and the anxiousness, because even, you know, it's like, oh, I got to constantly prove myself. I got to constantly prove myself in America. I got to constantly prove myself here in Africa. When can I just be accepted? Just, you know what I'm saying? Like, with who I am. And like I said, it just kind of makes me feel like you're saying you're not one of us. You might look like one of us, but you're not one of us. It makes me feel like that inside, but it's because of that trauma, right? So it's not even about y'all or you know, about when people say it, but it's the trauma that comes from it. So yeah, but again, like John said, we gonna relax, but
I just want to say,
Context,
I welcome it, because it puts me in a new space. Because if I was in the U.S. right now, I'm in my space, I'm in my room, I'm in my shell, right? My American bubble. But here, it makes me grow. It makes me want to say, how do I connect with this descendant, this place where, like, I could have once called home. Because the ideal is, it's a possibility. It's the Marvel what if, right? Like, what if I stayed where I was, where I look, where my majority is. Whether it's the Caribbean, South America, Africa, etc. Right? The list could go on.
Right.
But the what if, and so I'm happy to be in this weird place of awkwardness, sadness. You need to grow and connect, or do you just stay where you are? So this is why, like, thanks for coming. Thank you for allowing me to be here. And thanks for laughing at how I speak your mother tongue, because at least I am trying to connect with you. And I think that is a good place to be at right now.
It is. I appreciate it too. And I think when we get back home, we're going to be, you know, trying to educate other people, you know, about it. And it will feel like, okay, so now I got to break it down to you, because they won't really know until you come here. You know what I mean? So I'll end with what we're saying with this quote that, I'll end with that question. We ain't done, y'all. We ain't done. So I'll end with that quote saying that I saw online, actually on Facebook, but it was a good quote. To be African American is to be African without memory and American without privilege.
Oh, yo.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that was deep because I think
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just what we said, that just kind of wraps
Yeah.
up that context.
And I will just say, I don't want to steal the spotlight, but
No, you're
the
fine.
statement goes very well with what's happening in context to the U.S. U.S. politics right now. Whether it's we're rolling back affirmative action, whether we're making new laws how you can vote. Right? Whether it's redlining, whether it's counting marbles, which I'm sure some state will try to make that happen again, or whether it's this population has too many minorities that could change the vote of a Republican or Democratic legislative person, right? Like let them vote. I think that's a part of our amendment. I think like you have a right to vote. It's no longer like you're 18, white male. It's you're American citizen. It's your right.
Yeah.
But again, something's wrong in the waters.
We could be here all day on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So since actually I'm gonna have you answer this next question when we come
Sure.
up. But let's jump to our Eswatini here for their question. So next, which actually it flows perfectly. What do you know about colonialism and how did that affect your family and country? Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I might be short this time, so I will just leave my sister because when it comes to colonialism, this has to deal with geographic and all those things. So the only thing I know is just that we got independence in 1968. That's what I know about colonialism.
Okay.
And our country were unable to perform as they wish because we end up calling you Umlungu because it was you guys who offered us job here in our country. So that's why it begins, not that it begins today. It begins back then because it was a white man who offered job for Swazis while they were colonizing them. And they also pressed them somehow, such that they won't be able to perform or do something as they wish. You know, that was our colonialism. It was British or something, but I hope my sister was going to emphasize this and going to give more details on this because I really don't understand this. I think it's been a couple of years I last seen these stories, you know, because I think it's from grade 3. It's been a long time ago. But sis, I think you can just emphasize on this and also give more details. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing
Yes,
what
you
you know.
Thank
What you
you.
know,
Yes.
and being transparent and saying, "Hey, I don't really know, but this is what I know."
Yeah.
Which is also
thank
okay.
you.
I think, So, colonialism. You know, it's so interesting. We're having this conversation and it's 2024 and we're still dismantling and talking about like settler colonialism and dealing with settler colonialists who insist on taking land. So, long and short, there is a dictionary definition for what colonialism is, as well as neo-colonialism, as well as, you know, all the stages of colonialism that you'll have. But what I want to say before I start defining terms and creating frameworks is that I believe that colonialism is deeply tied to capitalism. And these two systems are heavily evil because they both degrade not just the identity, but the person as well as the land. Now, there's something that I believe in, and this idea of the occupation of land physically is also the occupation of the land spiritually.
Yes.
I'm not going to get into my own spiritual beliefs, but when you understand that when we came into this life, now this might sound very like, you know, like, what do you call it? Like lovely and colorful, but so my ideology of like if you gave Tandega a pen to say create a perfect world, you know, I would most likely draw in line with what I understand to be creationism, the concept of creationism.
I see.
So people live on earth to inherit the earth. And what inheriting the earth is not conquering it.
Yeah.
But colonialism is conquering the earth.
Yeah.
So it means I'm not simply just going to take your land because I want to dwell on it, but I will take your land, make you work the land, and give you nothing in return. I will use your historical knowledge of the land to gain maximum profit from it, which I will not only not distribute with you, but I will give you close to nothing for your generations to survive. I will systemically design places where you cannot even breathe, walk, or move. And all that can erupt in those places is violence, heartbreak, and no longevity at all. So these are all very synonymous with both colonialism and capitalism. And I don't want to differentiate them because with capitalism, I could really go on forever. But when it comes to the effects of colonialism, there is no family that wasn't affected by it. Because when you say to a nation, hey, I'm here and I would like to conquer your land and take it, you create fear and you disperse people, right? So the identity issue, in as much as, yes, you've described it, it also exists for people who live in Africa. Because when your land is taken away from you, you don't have anywhere to go. So you move and you migrate, right? So if you go to the National Museum, it's called Umsamo. There's a beautiful story on the wall about our migration from the central part of Africa down into the southern parts of Africa. In fact, in the literature of the Khoisan, they refer to us as settler colonialists in their literature, as the Nguni tribe, right? So we move down because this land is being taken away from you. And so you disperse and you lose your family, right? So the continuous colonial ideologies that are in line with capitalism, even though we've gotten this idea of freedom, or at least this page where it says, oh no, you guys are free, you don't exactly know the extent to where you come from. And that's because you've lost the majority of the people that you have traveled with. A lot of them died along the way. A lot of them you won't ever know again. A lot of the things that perhaps belonged to you and your generations simply based on the fact that you exist. Not because of this idea that there's a piece of paper to tell you that I have the title deed to this land, but because you've grown up there. All of these things no longer exist anymore. So we grow up and there is this beautiful professor, I love her mind, Dr. Kainsile Chabalala Litchfield. It's a threefold surname. And one of the things she teaches about is, in her lectures, she'll always tell you that the young people of this generation, the reason why they are as stuck as they are is because they wake up every day with no sense of identity, because they are landless and they are jobless and they have nowhere to go. So you live in a country where my family now has no ownership of land. If I want land, I must buy it, which is, again, under capitalism. I'm a black African Swazi living in Eswatini with no means to be making enough money to be buying pieces of land anyway. So it's a systemic thing, So it does still affect my family even to this day, because any repurchase of land where, again, like I defined in the beginning, I must occupy physically as well as spiritually, I will have to purchase back from whoever. So it's it's a continuous thing, systemic, and colonialism is very much evident, even though, like you said, we gained independence in 1968. But if the offshoots of that are still existent, our syllabus teaches how to farm plants that are not even conducive for the land. That's colonial history. You have textbooks that will tell you that the mode of dressing is khaki shorts and a khaki top. We're in 2024, but that's still the literature in policies, you see. So it's a continuous kind of understanding and shifting of, yes, the books say we got our independence in 1968, but what exactly is this freedom? What is this freedom? Tangible evidence, where is it of my freedom? So it's affected us. I'd say my family, maybe just say black people in Africa or Eswatini, were dispersed. You don't know everyone. You won't ever know anyone again. Your sense of identity is also slightly shaken, I'd say. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Such a
That was so
powerful
well
speech.
well said too. Thank you for both of you for sharing that. And 1968 wasn't that far ago.
When you think
far
about
away,
it,
you know, it really wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah. Wow. I'm just taking it in. Yeah, that's something else. Okay, so for our for us African Americans, a question to piggyback off of that is, what does colonialism mean to you, and do you think that colonialism still exists in your country? Why or why not? So, do you mind if I go first?
Go
on that?
for it, sis. Go.
All right. So, okay. So the dictionary definition of colonialism from Oxford is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers, and exploiting it economically. That's the definition. My definition, which is similar to what Tandega was saying, is a hateful and greedy system that seeks to diminish the cultural, physical, mental, familial, financial, and spiritual well-being of a group of people or ethnic group to financially and egotistically benefit or advance another group of people. So yes, neocolonialism is still real in America as well. And at every place that I've traveled and saw black people in the world, I have seen remnants of it. In the U.S. case, definitely. So social injustice is still real. Gentrification, which is the process whereby the character of a poor urban area, poor by their standards, of course, but there's a lot of power in everywhere, a lot of levels of that, but that's a whole nother story. So it's the process whereby the character of a poor urban area is changed by typically white privileged people moving in, improving housing, and attracting new businesses, typically for their people, and displacing current inhabitants, which are people of color, and most of the time people of color in the process. So that's what gentrification is, just a little sublet. But also you see inequality in pay. You see food deserts in black communities where, coming from, in the community where we're from, Sambulo, like in terms of food deserts, like there's no, like fresh fruits and vegetables like that availability of that is not there. The healthy food is just junk food and stuff that's just basically killing us. Disproportionate incarceration of black males, especially in prisons and jails, and exploitation of financial gain from it. White folks still have more money by default and generational gain from their predecessors who became rich from slavery and exploitation of people of color. And I'm not saying this for every white person or for every black person, but majority, yeah. And still making billions off of slavery. Still making billions. Well, yeah, that too. But billions off of black-derived inventions and backs of anyone in the middle or lower economic class. Whitewashed education, using media to re-implement negative depictions of black people as a means to mentally manipulate your social status and value as a black person. And I can go on and on. But yeah, so that's my take on that.
Yeah, colonialism, it still exists for sure, with not only within the context of Africa, but on the global level as well. I was on TikTok or YouTube and I heard a Rasta say, when the British left India, they left their technology. But when the British left Africa, they left tea. And that statement made a very clear distinction of what colonialism can do for certain countries, right? When you push it out, you can either thrive with what the end results and you make do with it, such as what India is doing, or you could leave the remnant of something that is so casual and still be willing to accept the conditions of colonialism. And I think it's very clear, maybe not within the context of Eswatini, but to the larger continent of Africa, of ongoing colonialism that's still going on. Whether we're talking about the DRC, whether we're talking about Rwanda, or whether we're talking about the effects of immigration from Africa to other various nations. We're seeing colonialism still leave a horrendous mark on black and brown faces. And so that's something that we can clearly see. But I think when we think of the context of colonialism in America, in the U.S. and the States, it's hard. It's hard because it's a difficult thing to say. We can state it, we can say it, but when you try to explain the details in the meticulous way it affects people, ears go deaf. And so how do you reach people by talking about colonialism that doesn't harden their hearts, but makes it an open conversation? And I think that's where we are struggling with in the U.S. We cannot have the dialogue without fierce white fragility always on the wall. Oh, no, they're talking about what the white people have done. I didn't do that. Well, no one said you did it. What we're saying is we can see from the history, we can see from our events, we can see from what our textbooks have said. Because clearly we didn't write those textbooks. Mac Miller, if we can even say the name, they write the textbooks that our schools purchase. And then we learn it from our teachers. But again, from colonialism, it trickles down into what you know. Who wrote the history books? Do we know about the Tulsa Massacre? Do we know about the various black communities back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s that were flooded in the southern states? Or about the events that happened? Let's talk about New York for real quick. Like, Times Square was not Times Square. Times Square used to be farmland. It used to be a swamp. But what is it now? And who had that land first? It was black Southerners who went north and had land in New York, and then they took it away. So colonialism has its deep fingers in so much of our history and so much of what we're experiencing now when it comes to the backlash. And I just wish that there was more of a dialogue. And in my notes, I just really want to say, and I think, Sis, you said it really on the top, but to destabilize and destructure, that's colonialism. And so it destabilizes our families. It destabilizes our languages. It just destabilizes how we leave a footprint for the next generation. And I think for, at least within our American context, our footprints are muddled. There's a footprint here, a footprint there. And so there's no one direction. There's piles of footprints going each and every way because we can't get our thoughts together. The intelligentsia is missing. And I wonder where it is. Who said it? It was Frederick Douglass said the 10%. We're looking for the 10%. And I, like 2024, and we're going to say this in 2025, 26, 2035, 2050, where is the 10% of the black population that's going to make that change, right? I don't know yet. Maybe it's a fable, maybe it's a myth that he had in his head one day, but I don't see it yet. Or maybe they're incarcerated already. I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you, Pro.
And to piggyback off of that, I think when I was explaining this, I was a little bit on fire, y'all. So excuse me on that. But I love how you all how it all came together and explaining that because you're giving the viewers these different modes of how you see colonialism and how that's still an issue, because you'll hear people say, oh, colonialism or slavery was so long ago, get over it, or it doesn't affect me. Even black people, you'll hear like, it don't affect me, I got money, or I got this, it don't affect me, but it still does. It still affects you, and it's not something that we're bringing up to like be a mood changer or to dwell on, a hurtful past, but we have to know the past in order to get to our future. You gotta know the past because, if not, then it will continue to repeat itself in different forms, which we're seeing. And you gotta know where you came from to know where you're going. Not staying there. Nobody wants to stay in that space, but that's just wisdom, right? To know, how to move to be more progressive, right?
Yeah.
Could I actually? I actually have some. I just thought about this concrete evidence, right, of colonialism in the U.S. It just came to me. So let's also talk about how we enveloped Hawaii and Alaska within our American in the U.S. context into our Constitution, and then we can also talk about Cuba, right? And then we could talk about all these other islands that U.S. Polynesia, and I think U.S. Polynesia is a very interesting one, right? These are various chains of islands that had their own law, their own liberty, their own land, and somehow we took it from them, whether by crook, religion, etc. How is that ours? Those are their own indigenous people with their own indigenous language and traditions, yet it is within our context of what we claim as our land. And so that's another way of how colonialism has affected American history as well, of claiming these lands. And I think especially with the events happening in Hawaii right now, like people are still fighting for their rights and their customs to stay relevant, but they are slowly being washed away. So how do we prevent that? And so those are just other ways that colonialism has affected the U.S. as well.
Yeah, on a broad scale.
Yes.
Thank you for that. All right, y'all. So we're almost wrapping up here in our back and forth questions. Can we just take a second to just breathe? Wow, that was a lot to just take in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I think when I first got to my HBCU, my historically black college, and really, getting that information and learning about this, I'm like, man, I'm mad, but I'm wore out because you'll be mad all day, really just getting this information. It can be emotionally taxing, emotionally exhausting when you're just seeing this and you don't know, okay, how do I move on from this? Like, it's all this information about us being, killed and taken from and, all of this stuff. How do I move forward with that? And it's still a question I don't really have. I guess, just really walking in your truth and what God's given us. And one thing that I do know is that, and I can only speak for where I come from. I don't know about no other races. I'm sure they got their own, they good people of love. But us as black people, I feel like we are people of love. Like I've never seen love being manifested in so many ways, through music, through art, through television, through just anything. Like the way that we demonstrate our love, even being here in Africa, you're seeing it in this communal environment. Booty, Sisi, Mage, Nababe, Gogo, just that love and that embrace. I can feel it. And just even we just have that, no matter all the traumatic thing and the messed up stuff we've experienced, nothing will take away from the love that we have, and it will be nothing like it. It's nothing like it. So I just wanted to add that in there, just really quick. But okay, so back to us, just to wrap this up, on the question end for our Eswatini. If you could just briefly say, one of you could say this. What did you think about Black Americans before? So before you even met a Black American, what did you think about them before, and have your thoughts changed? Or what did you see on television or media about Black Americans, and have it changed? Or yeah.
Okay. Firstly, if I've ever met Black Americans, I thought, truly speaking, are very proud people. Yeah, because I feel like they've got their own legacy, because they are able to act, and they've got a lot of ways of backupping their own economy. So I thought the one will be reliable to someone else. You know, I just thought that they can't even help. They can't even help maybe Africans. I will just combine all Africans. You know, with some certain and necessary things such as scholarships and all the things, because they've got their own economy. So they won't be reliable to someone as if they need something as well to them. So I thought they are just the people who think for themselves. But hey, I was then surprised. Yeah, I was then surprised meeting someone who's like, because I've ever said this before, I've ever mentioned it, and I'm still emphasizing, you are the first person to meet. You were the first Black American to meet. So you did prove me wrong on all what I've been thinking maybe for all that couple of years, because you've come up with the real you, and I thought you've already represent all your membership where you came from. So I feel like what you are doing to us is the very same thing they can do as well to others. So I'm just sharing facts. I thought you are very, very, very selfish people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that. But like I've said, that you did prove me wrong. I think that's what I can say for now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
And thank you for I feel like a better
I
person.
thought you are just the people who just
Yeah.
think for themselves.
I don't know. I think more optimistic than I am in general. So what I mean by that is, for one, I think I need more data to form an opinion on a collective. I don't have enough yet.
Okay.
But from what I do know, let me just say, maybe from a social kind of interactive point of view, I've met you guys now, which is great and awesome. I think you guys are amazing. I do like to title continents with their problems. So like not problems, but like what I often see, right? So Europe, I'd also say, has a guilty conscience, a Christian guilty conscience. That's Europe. And then America has arrogance, the American arrogance, you know?
Yeah.
So there's that. I think when you're raised and bred in America, you are taught you can be like American dream, like I said. So you do go out into the world with this very capitalistic point of thinking, divide, conquer. I must make the most of wherever I am. I must be very impactful. I must ensure that I get everything done, right? Now, one of my biggest criticisms of a lot of films that show a lot of the Black history is the white savior at the end. I always have a problem with that, because I'm just like, no, but you see, that's the problem for me. You know, this consistent ideology of the need for a savior within like the African context. So there's this really recent splat that happened on Twitter. I don't know if you guys know Tyler. Make me sweet, make me water. Yeah. So she goes on TV and she says, "Oh," then they're like, "Oh, hi Tyler, where you from? What's your, tell us what your ethnicity is, your race. Tell us more about yourself." And Tyler says on live TV in America on the red carpet, "Hey, my name is Tyler and I'm colored." And the whole mess ensued online.
Yeah.
Like, African Americans said, there's actually no way you can come to our country and disrespect our history like that. You know? And I said, okay, that's also like, in as much as maybe they don't know, but that's also the American arrogance of thinking your story is the singularly most important story in the world, when it's not. Colored in South Africa means a completely different thing. It's not race. It's more like a group ethnicity of, okay, yes, this is the group that they refer to at the point in time. But, you know, when you're wearing that veil of, I know everything, because I have the best education system in the world, I have the most money, my dollar is leveraged against every other currency.
Exactly.
You never believe that you can be, on a very principal level, fundamentally and factually incorrect.
Yeah.
So I think for me that was a huge, like, it's very nice to be on social media because you get to have a lot of case studies on human behavior in real time.
Yes.
And even though Twitter's a very large minority, you still get like insight into that, just to say, this thinking pattern.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really say that my views have changed. Actually, they've changed for the better, because I'm able to say this is just a person with their own struggles. They go through their own things. So we've had this beautiful discussion where I understand more about the Black American struggle of existence, as well as you understand more about my African struggle of existence. And to say that these are two completely different worlds. So I have more grace, more understanding. To say, you know, to be quite fair and honest, from what they know, this is the truth. And it's really hard to take back an agreement you said and have with yourself and form another agreement.
Yeah.
Especially if like you're in your 20s and this is what you've known to be true your whole life. You have a resistance to that new information coming in. So I'd say my views have changed, though, I mean, obviously from a cultural point of view, we're always going to have these differences a little bit, but no animosity whatsoever. I just think we all have different experiences in life. So it's a process. I'm always going to get to know more about Black Americans based on my exposure to them, fairly and truly. So, yeah.
And thank you for sharing that. So to piggyback off of what you're saying, can you both of you tell us, like, what do you see on TV, though, for Black Americans? How do you really see us on TV? What is the stereotypical stuff that you see on TV?
Maybe just before, Kumalo next to me over here continues. When I was reading up for our conversation, I actually came across an article written by a Nigerian journalist. I forget her name. I'll try and link it, in
that link
below.
Put on the link, yeah.
But there is a part actually where they speak about Black TV filmmakers and how you'll find that the stories that tell real Black American stories don't get the funding in Hollywood that they would, they deserve for real stories to be told.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time what we see on TV, I've learned, is mostly white approved content. So if this is the story that can be published in Hollywood, then let's all systems go,
Yeah.
So like you said, I really loved that statement about the violence of white fragility. I love it when statements do that because, fragility and violence wouldn't really go together in the same statement. But you can tell just how violent that must be just within the Hollywood community, to say, in as much as it isn't you are not responsible for what happened, and we're not saying you are, but this resistance to hear and this resistance to not want to tell our story is worrisome, because why don't you want to tell our story? So I'd say what I've seen on TV is very much what everyone in Hollywood wants me to see on TV, which is stereotypical Black Americans, gang stereotypes and affiliations, washed down. It's always very much they want us to believe what we see on TV, as well as propaganda. I don't know if you guys know what propaganda is, but this basically making a lot of Black characters on TV and film cops and being the police force, to make the cops and the police force more appealing to people, of more equal, when it's not really like that,
Whitewashed.
Yes, whitewashed. So I'd say that a lot of what I've seen, maybe just because now I'm more conscious of my surroundings and I'm very politically and socially involved in my world, then I'd say, what I see on TV, I don't think is a true really reflection of what Black America looks like for Black Americans.
Yeah.
Some parts of it maybe, but not entirely.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Sambulo, did you have something?
No, she have already touched all the departments.
She hit the hammer on the nail, as they would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's such a great speaker.
Right? Everyone is.
Yeah.
I love it.
May I chime in? I think what you just said about Taylor's comment is very interesting, because again, to know the term colored within Southern Africa or in Africa or in the U.S. is all due to access and knowing your history.
True.
And it seems as if history is being rewritten right in front of our faces. Because if you're colored, that could be very many things within the African context, especially within the history of Southern Africa. Because we don't really hear the history of colored unless we're talking about apartheid. Like, why? When they are their own people, Afrikaners and Africans and the Belgiums, boom, history. And you move in, they're in Durban and all these other communities. And then even in Eswatini, what I've seen, Togazani, are you colored? No. Are you mixed? No. And it's a whispered. It's never spoken out loud. It's always whispered. And I'm like, but what's wrong with color? What's wrong with being mixed? There's nothing wrong with it. But there's still it's the tone, right? How you make some of those clicks or the X's, the tone shifts, that tone shifts. And even in the U.S., right? We may not use the word colored, but we would use mixed or mulatto or Creole look or Creole-like. And so there's all these bad terms of you mix bad blood. Or like there's that rule back in, there's a famous movie. I can't think of it right now. Maybe it's Gone with the Wind or some other film where it's the one drop rule. One drop of a black person's blood makes you full black. And so there's a scene where this white woman, she's married a colored man and his blood dropped on her or whatever. And then her family dismisses her because she's been touched by black blood, right? So this ideal that having an interracial marriage ruins the race or ruins the person. And you're like, no, it's just the identity of where we're all coming from. So I thank you for mentioning that. And we need to know our history before we make these statements, before we make any statements, before even what's happening in the U.S. when it comes to black people trying to identify themselves. Whether you want to call yourself a Jew, whether you want to call yourself a descendant from Africa, or whether you want to call yourself an American, please know your history first. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. And to add to that, I think, I don't know, but I think when, just to kind of look on both ends, I guess to play devil's advocate, the offense of her being called colored, or of her calling herself colored, also the lack of knowing the history, especially in South Africa, when, they do have that classification for those things coming from apartheid.
It was on a card.
Yeah. But
and
also,
there was a test too.
Yeah, and also,
pen?
in America, that colored term, we don't use that anymore. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that term was coming from, Jim Crow during that time as well. So I think if I'm explaining it right, I guess that's where the animosity comes from. Like you're even labeling yourself in this negative connotation, but I know that her intentions wasn't that way, but I'm just playing devil's advocate. That's probably where that came from. Like, okay, you bringing up this term, and it's really, we looking at it as a negative way, because now, why are you labeling yourself that way? And it's, just say you're either black or, you know what I'm saying? So I think, like, again, that lack of education looking at it in that term, but just some people knowing where that term even came from. And the ugly part of that is like, okay, we get it that that's a classification. It should be fine. But knowing where it comes from is like, okay, I'm mad. Because, you know what I'm saying?
May I chime in? So I think that's why I use the term American arrogance for that kind of contextual engagement. And the reason why I say this is because apartheid and the Jim Crow laws have a lot of similarities in the way that they treated the people of that particular country. When you look at the history of slavery and when slavery began, when people started moving and being taken from African ports and being taken to America. When you get to America, you have this huge history as well of Christianization, where you're told to separate yourself from where you come from to the best of your abilities. Remove this African veil of yours. You must become more like us here, and you must live according to our own standards, right? So you have a history as an American, an American citizen, that stems not just from the first time your ancestors touched the shore of America, but from the time that it happened here. Right? So in homegoing, these two different realities of oppression are happening at the same time, right? You have people that have been enslaved in America, and you have people who have been left behind and are getting ravaged by tribalism, are getting ravaged by colonialism, and are getting ravaged by their own systems and governance of slavery architecture, right? So even when you say, like, you know, South Africans should know more about where they come from, I think they do. And the reason why I say that I think that they do is because you have a lot of Black conscious leaders who have dedicated their life to that education. One of my favorite Black conscious thought leaders is Steve Biko. Chris Hani. So when you think about it in a Bikoist thinking of framework, is that there is an explanation for who you are today based on what you've been through before. Trevor Noah also alludes to it in Born a Crime, where he describes what it's like living as a person of mixed race in South Africa at the time. The privileges that came with it, as well as the access that came with it. So perhaps in America, right, I don't know because I don't have that context, but the way that you're describing it is it was quickly removed as a name tag because it carried extreme negative connotations. But in the South African context, being mixed or having at least one white relative in your family meant better access, meant a closer proximity to freedom. It meant a closer proximity to whiteness. So why wouldn't you claim that? You know what I'm saying? So it's a thing of, like, you have a two different, like, experiences that come from the same word. And these two different experiences that come from the same world will inevitably shape the future of the children you birth and their children and the people that come therefore after. So, you know, like you're saying, you know, why would you then call yourself a negative, like, term? It's like, perhaps I'm not even aware it's a negative term based on my history and my context of existence. So you see, it's like, these are two different realities and we must make space for both of them because I exist as myself, having grown up in a Southern African community, and you have grown up as yourself as a person who's lived in an American community. So we both have the same kind of qualms about the world, but my experiences are very different from yours, even though we get to the same conclusion of why our pain matters.
Thank you. And I think even with that response, you'll get, okay, because I feel like we're operating in a space of confusion because we don't as Black people as a whole, the African diaspora, in this space of confusion. Because now, if you say that, I'll hear people that say, okay, you're saying that you want to identify as color for better access, and you know you want to have that drop of white, and it's like, oh, so you don't embrace the Black side of you that is, you know, that is prideful, and you know that you should be proud of, and so you feel like you're more acceptable if you have a drop of white in you, you know, and then we're all mad because now I'm arguing at you because you don't think you Black enough, and you don't think I'm Black enough, and what is Black enough, and nobody's Black enough. We don't even know where the Black came from. So what is Black? You know, so it's just in that space of confusion. That's why these conversations are great, because we get to hear and we get to think and we get to talk and kind of iron that out if we can. But let me, I know, I know
just one thing I just want to say, but it's just so interesting how then skin tone plays into this, right? So if you're a child of mixed race, now here's the opportunity for you to take some advantages if you can, right? So we know that in the U.S., there are many light-skinned Black women who took advantage of that by making their way into the house of the masters, right? And then from there, they were able to make into the offices or have a business or get the loan. And that's just, whether it's a man or a woman of light skin, they were able to do that. While their dark-skinned counterpart always got the hate, always got the look, always got the, oh, look at that dark-skinned Black man. I'm using Black man, but we know what they were really saying. Oh, he's Black like the devil. right? Like always this negativity.
Yeah.
And then even in the churches, we'll talk about the Episcopal Church real quick, like the brown bag test, right? Like if they can see the blue veins in your skin, then you could sit at the front of the church. And then you can even see that with even from folks from Barbados or from St. Lucia, right? We learn their stories of how they would sit in the back of the church while the light-skinned folks sat in the front. It's crazy how laws then proceeded by something on our bodies to say this is what you're worth and this is how it will work.
Yeah.
And how it still continues in the U.S. and in other countries where black Africans or the black diaspora still live in. Because in Brazil, they bleach their skin knowing that those folks have such amazing black and brown skin tones, but yet they only feel comfortable if they look white.
Yeah.
Now, I can't judge them, that's them, but it makes me really wonder, like, what effect did colonialism really have on their culture to say, you are not beautiful unless you are white?
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna say a quick thing, then we got to move on, y'all. But and that's the issue of even here. I've talked to a lot of, and maybe you can attest to that. Some women bleach their skin here, so we're just still seeing those remnants of colonialism, right? And media plays a big part. And I really just quickly wanted to touch on media. That's why I asked you guys how do you see Black Americans? And, just on our end, I can go ahead and go into that of how we even saw Africa on media. You see the babies that are poor and, got the big bellies and people who are poor, or you hear about diseases and, if I hear poor and Africa together one more time, I'm going to rip my hair out, so not seeing, how vibrant Africa is and how it's 2024, ain't nobody hunting no lions, you know what I'm saying? Or how there's nice structures, there's black people driving nice cars, but we don't see that really on television. So then you have, that tool of media to divide us again, so that black people who've never been to Africa before, now that's all I know, so that's how I'm going to perceive a African person if I meet one, right? Or when I first go to Africa, that's what I'm expecting. And then you have people who are here in Africa, and if they've never met a Black American, then that's all I'm going to see is people who are getting shot up and black on black crime, people killing each other, gangsters, and the women who are being degraded and these negative lights. So it creates that divide again, right? And even growing up, like I remember me being a darker skin tone woman, growing up and people saying, "Oh, you so black, you look like an African," and I was offended because I've always heard this negative stuff growing up, and I'm like, well, and I'd be so mad. And now getting that education, it's like, yeah, I'm supposed to look like African. I am African. What you talking about, and embracing that and being happy, for you to say that. And I love that I'm so black. Yes, I'm so black, so, but it took education and it took self-acceptance on that, right? And it took actually coming to Africa to see that beauty, right? And not just seeing it, but reflecting it, turning that mirror back to myself and saying, wow, we as a collective are beautiful. We are as chocolate as you can get, honey. But even if you can't be, you're still black, right? That's still beautiful as well, So I just wanted to add that in there really quick I know we're kind of running out of time, but I just wanted to add that, like, how media really plays a huge role in that division. And I think that's another reason why we have that division. Or I see, I don't know, we'll go into misconceptions and say that part. But, yeah, it's just a big divide with the media in that terms. Do anybody want to add on to that, maybe?
Maybe I could, actually.
Please,
because I
yes.
think when you speak about media, one of my favorite shows that I'm not really a big TV person.
Yeah.
But there's this Inside Job show on Netflix. And one of the departments of the shadow government in the show is the media department, right? So when something really important is going on in the world, they just, they just give you a whole lot of things to distract you. That's how they illustrate it there. But also you realize how important the media has been in making, let me say, the black person hate themselves. So like you're saying, I think you're describing how like your lighter skin tone was access to better resources. It was also perhaps access to romantic success, social mobility,
climbing that ladder.
So all of those things were very much related to, I'd say, an anti-black framework of existence. So you had to really just like think, and I think every single black individual, if you didn't grow up in a home that was very intentional about what you saw and what you believed about yourself, at some point you did want to be white. Which is a very like powerful thing when you think about it, that the conditioning that you've gone through in your life has made you at some point want to become something else. And that's sort of like self-loathing and self-hatred, even though it's not maybe intentional, but no one's really saying to you, you should not like yourself. You shouldn't really enjoy being who you are, is that you see it even in children. So you start young and people are dissing you for being too black. People are even dissing you for being too black here, because I got that here as well, So it's not even a thing of the further you are, colorism is everywhere, because colorism is a child of racism.
Yes.
If racism exists, then so does colorism.
Right.
So it's a thing of, I think we've all had those experiences of this level of rejection of the self in order to appease this bigger notion of, I must be something else for me to live an easy life. And everyone at this table knows that life isn't easy because they've been denied access to some things based on who they are. Even though no one was telling you, no, you can't get in because you look the way you look. But you've known why you haven't, been able to receive those experiences. So, I mean, this also makes it really difficult to point out when you're not getting access to things because, like a very popular line is it because I'm black? And it's like, it's a joke, but it's true. Like sometimes if we had the courage to say, are you rejecting me because I'm black? They won't say yes, but truly fairly, like, yes, you're too dark to be on the cover. Right. You're too, quote unquote, ratchet is what you hear a lot when describing hood environments in America to be a part of this conversation.
Right.
So it's like, I think things like that. So that's really all I want to say.
And I think you're so right. So let's take for within the American example the Tuskegee Airmen incident, right? When they injected 300 black men with, with an STI. Syphilis. Thank you, sis. With syphilis, and then they untreated syphilis, and then they gave these men placebos. So if they were white, would that if it was at another university in Utah or a university in New York, would they have done that to them? Or would they have been given the correct drug to really see the effects of syphilis in these men? And then let's also talk about the men in PA who they did scientific experimentation on as well. If they were white prison inmates, would they have done this same experimentation? I don't think so, right? But because they were black and thought of less than, then let's go ahead and do these experimentations. And why? Like, where is this accountability for the other person? If I won't treat myself with the same respect, why would I do that to the other, right? And again, this is where religion, the golden rule, doesn't match with what they say from the book. Now, I'm not trying to go into religion or go into personal beliefs, but we have to realize that there's something doesn't match from their religion, our religion, and what we know to be religion or spirituality. So where is that disconnect? Where is that respect for one another? It's gone because someone wants the power. And so until we have equal power distribution, we will always have this conflict. And it's a conflict that's not just in the U.S., but it's a global context as well.
And on the inside, right? That inner conflict, right? Thank you for that. So we're kind of running out of time, y'all. So I would I just want to address this question just because it's the same question for all of us. And then I'll just choose maybe 2 things from the myths and misconceptions freestyle session. Y'all know I like to say that. And then we'll go into our last question and we'll wrap up. This has been powerful. I mean, we could do this all day. I could do this all day. But the last question for everyone is, or in that part and in this segment, I would say, is why do you think a lot of Black Americans and Africans have not been able to work with each other now? And I'm not saying none have, but why do you think a lot of them haven't? So I'll just start off with my opinion. So for some people, I think that it's the lack of kindness and allowing the world to pit hatred and judgment toward each other. So I feel like we're not giving ourselves that room, like you were saying, in terms of that room for grace, you know, like it's okay if you don't know it all, you know, but let's talk about it. And again, we have other people telling us who we should love, who we should hate, you know, even toward ourselves. So I think that's a big issue. And also lacking that emotional maturity and availability and those loving conversations. Some of us don't even know how to articulate how we're feeling or how to even start that conversation, where to even start, and who to even go to have that conversation. And also that lack of encouragement and lack of understanding of the power of we actually means a stronger me, right? That Ubuntu, right? We don't really got that. I know some of you had touched on individualism in terms of seeing that for Black Americans in America. And that was something that was refreshing coming here in Africa was, you know, you get to see more of that communal that we, right, and no more of that individual. I'm gonna just be to myself. I'm gonna be successful. All I care about is my family, right? Also that lack of knowing who we are in God, and as people all over the world and caring about it, right? So that responsibility of that, and even thinking of it as a responsibility, right? I think just to quickly say this, I think a lot of people, and I'm sure you can attest to this, in America, you know, for people, especially who have never been nowhere, when you see stuff on TV about like some messed up stuff going on in Africa or in some other country, you know, we're like, dang, that's messed up. But it's kind of like, it's not really my problem. You know, I'm just worried about where I am now. And I feel like I'm not saying that you should become Barack Obama and make a whole difference, but, you know, using your gifts to try to do something, maybe even send some money towards that for that cause, or, you know, just using what the gifts that you have to make it better for somebody else, you know, is a responsibility. I feel personally, for me, I believe. So I just feel like that if we all thought that way, we could all move. We could work together in a collective way that we can be more successful. Also, the lack of knowledge of heritage that we talked about, and power of energy transformation that we should also be aware of, right? In this room, I'm feeling positive energy. I'm feeling that energy of you know, impact, and, you know, that makes me to be better, right? And that makes me to start being a better version of myself, and I'm sure for everybody else, right? So that positive energy. If everybody was in here negative and didn't want to talk about nothing, you know, positive, it would change my energy, right? And also the lack of healing to know that who we are is enough. Who we are is enough, and nothing external can define nor change that. You know, no matter how successful we get, whatever career we have, how much money you got, what you're wearing, what you're driving, that has nothing to do with who we are, which are people of love. To me, in my eyes, people of love, people of power, of light, you know, of creativity. And traumatic strongholds from slavery that mentally chains us, and the fear of rejection and acceptance from even people in Africa and vice versa, right? With that fear of maybe I won't be accepted, which I'm speaking from my experience, right? Or I might be rejected because they don't even know me for real. They'll call me Umlungu. I don't know. So that fear of, should I even work with these people? So that is my take. on that question, and maybe we can just get one person to answer, briefly answer that, and then we'll do 2 freestyle sessions, and then we'll jump to the last question. Give me my snaps, y'all. What is that?
Sorry. I'm waiting for a sister for me to say something. I'm like, I have something to say.
No, I think, maybe I think you've said a lot of everything that is possibly there. And maybe my only addition would be, I think, one of my favorite verses is, my people perish from lack of knowledge. The reason why I like that is because knowledge is a very powerful tool. And I think the only thing that can limit you from connecting with anyone is not knowing enough about them. So I think just that knowing enough, just like pursuing knowledge, I think that's what stops us from connecting, because in as much as, yes, someone has an idea of like who you are, perhaps not even just as a Black American, but just like even a person seeing you on the street, that shouldn't be happening. Like if we knew more, we wouldn't be making assumptions about people we don't know anyway, So I just think that like brain development in terms of having more knowledge in your brain is always like, for me, the best part. And then also connecting everything you do to the heart, because everything that you do will flow from it. So it's like a thing of, yes, I mean, I want to get to know Ebony more. So what do I do if I want to get to know Ebony more? I ask the questions that matter. Where do you come from? Who are you? What things limit you? What do you want to do with the world? So yeah, I just think like, let's put away the ego from everyone's perspective and just like work on knowing more about each other. I think that's where we start to connect. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
I like that. All right.
Wait, can I just say something?
Now,
Because I think this is
brief
important. I will. Because I just want to throw in Marcus Garvey. I think Marcus Garvey made, back during the Civil Rights era and moving forward from like the 60s into the 70s and 80s, right, there was a movement to go back to Liberia. And that was it was stopped. It was ceased because there was so much anxiety or fear. If we leave the U.S., can we come back? If we go to Africa, will we be accepted? What happens when we want to go back and start a commerce, an exchange of goods and services, right? That fear. And I think this is funny because Bob Marley also talks about Marcus Garvey as well, but yet we don't hear much about Marcus Garvey anymore. He's seen as sort of like the offshoot of what could have or what could have been, but never really. And yet, in the U.S., we have so many Black Americans who feel the need to seek our heritage, but yet don't travel. So there's a disconnect. And I think from these misunderstandings between Black Americans and Africans, because I think this is Africa as a whole, not just for Eswatini, how do we build and again, this is why I go back to the intelligentsia, because this is how it seems a bit classist, because sometimes I get in trouble with these classist ageist statements, but I just have to say them. Like, where is the intelligentsia trying to reconnect our people together? Like, I do feel like there is something that's blocking Africans and Black Americans from having the conversation, because it gets divided on whether or not where we came from specifically, but we know where we came from.
Yeah.
Where's the dialogue? And we know that if we do start making these connections to Africa as a whole, there are benefits and then there are cons. We've seen the cons. We know what happened to Liberia. We know what happened in the DRC. We know what happened in Rwanda. We are seeing what's happening in Ethiopia right now with the xenophobia in South Africa. So we know all these things are happening posed by former colonialists coming into Africa and whatever the U.S. is doing, right? So then how do we make sure that our intentions are positive and good as well? And I think that there's no one trying to really access the statement of, if you want to come back, you can. But just be prepared to be like, you have to work at it. I am working to learn Siswati. Ni funzisa Siswati. That was a little poor, but I'm working at it, right? But no one's working to come to Africa because they're stuck at trying to get this American dream. I got to work this 9 to 5. I got 2 jobs here. I got to make these deliveries. I got to make this dough. If I don't make the dough, grandma don't get fed. We don't, and it's the same concept here in Eswatini too. But if you don't, and I guess maybe this is for Peace Corps volunteers, maybe there's a privilege that we have to come over here and do this work because we have the intention to do this and we have the ability to take off 2 years of our lives to do this, while others may not. But again, there are other ways to refocus our attention to bridging the gaps. Let's find those ways. Let's have the dialogues. Let's make the exchange happen so where the Bo nurse and the Bo Doctella can come over to the U.S., exchange ideals, and then now we have eager and nurses and doctors wanting to do the work without having to being stressed about coming to work or trying to walk out the door at 3:30 when you know we should be open till 4. So it's these things that I think we should really be working on for a good exchange between our two people. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I think we ran out of time with the misconception freestyle session.
Are we sure? I mean, there's like
You
two
ran
of them.
you ran up our
I
time,
can't. Marcus
John.
Garvey is important to mention here.
No, I like it.
But
Give
I
me
think also
some.
with the myths,
you're
with
heard.
the myths and the misconceptions, a lot of them were
We
kind of addressed.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
That was good. So I
Yeah.
was gonna say that. So we did address a lot of them. So I guess just one of them that we didn't really touch on was the misconception. Can I just get a volunteer who wants to do that?
A misconception on what?
Yeah. All Africans are poor. That misconception.
It wouldn't be controversial to say. It wouldn't be. But all Africans are poor.
Address that one for us.
So there's something very interesting that you said earlier about the majority being the poorest class in Southern Africa, when like the minority holds the most amount of wealth. And obviously you know how that happens because that happens through acquisition and acquiring and conquering of land.
Right.
So there's a story that I like to tell to my younger sister whenever we're driving, and she's like, why do these names have Sprout at the end? And so what I found out was when I was having a conversation with one of my elders is that what the settlers used to do is they just draw up land and they'd say, this is Nelspruit, this is my Spruit, this is next to my river, right? So Nelspruit was Nelspruit before, so that's where that was his Spruit, and then it became a whole place that then belonged to them. So if you think about how easy it was for settlers to be able to acquire and get land at the time, and also access to state resources, right? So when, for instance, in South Africa, you had the apartheid government come in, and they had, stipends for other Afrikaner farmers. They had amazing, schools for the Afrikaner learners, and then everything else was underfunded, right? So yes, I would say there are those exceptions, a few where, you do have rich Africans, which is, awesome and great. But you also only start witnessing that deep after they have their freedom and they get liberated. We can talk about how only 10% of the population is able to get that and acquire that wealth. We can talk about that offline. But also you can tell that systemically, you can't really have a nation of rich Africans because Africa has been plundered. So in as much as you see this depiction, which is far from the truth, because we have phones, we know what the internet is, we don't run around in jungles all the time, we kind of live very similar lives, but it's much harder to move up in terms of your social mobility. I would say here in terms of your access, because like I said, all of it is tied to land. So not all Africans are poor, but systemically it is designed for them to stay poor. So maybe that's the right analysis.
Thank you for that. I like that. So we addressed the misconception of thinking that Africans live in huts and hunt wild animals like lions in 2024. We're not doing that, okay?
Yeah.
No, they're not. All right. I
no
gotta
way.
say that even for some of my black family members, we ain't doing that over here now.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had to do the same too.
I'm
like,
telling
I
you.
saw a giraffe though. Do you want to talk about that giraffe? Like, that was pretty cool.
And for me, I had to go to like a nature reserve park to see that. It's not like there.
Yeah.
I wish I saw a giraffe walking across, but that's not the way it
You
is.
can talk about the snake I saw the other night.
Okay, now
Be
we can
like,
talk about some
right?
snakes,
Yeah.
but you know,
That's everywhere.
the other misconception of all African Americans are lazy and shoe people. That's not true. Okay.
Yeah.
And I just
Like
feel
just
like
malicious news.
yeah, it's not true. I again, there's good and bad in anything,
Mm-hmm.
and there's good and bad people, but then we can go deep into that. Is there really, you can't just make that label, right, and say something is good or bad. It's so many, I think life is just a gray area within itself. So you can't just make that absolute and say that as well.
No, you can't.
All Africans steal and scam people. We all know that's a myth, a misconception, right? Again, you got good people, you got bad people, and it's not, you just can't do that.
The faith is that all.
We just gonna do, yeah. We ain't, and I think sometimes too, when people experience something from one person, then they want to generalize it and say, "Oh, all of these people like
Yeah.
this," and it's
Yeah.
that's not right. Also, African Americans have the same privilege as whites in America, so we really talked about that here. We know that that's not true.
No.
That at all, right? All Africans are poor. You beautifully explained that in terms of addressing that misconception. Also, African Americans know their heritage just like African citizens. We addressed that as well early on in our conversation. And we also touched on how colorism does in fact exist in Africa as well as other parts of the world, in terms of, you're seeing that with people bleaching their skin and bullying other people who are African or black or whatever, I'm sorry. Black Africans, right, are just like people in America. We're making fun of each other because of our skin tone. If you're darker, if you're lighter, and not just accepting who we are and loving who we are, as we are. So that was the run of the myths and misconceptions freestyle session. We already addressed it. So, wow. I know that we're running out of time, but let me just get to this last question, because this is a positive note, and we always want to end on a positive note.
For sure.
So how, we talked about all the issues and the problems, but now how can African Americans and Africans help each other moving forward? Economically, spiritually, socially, and more. How can we help each other moving forward?
Yeah, it's a very packed question.
Mm-hmm.
Packed questions, because are you asking from the American government standpoint, or are you asking from an individual point of view?
You, however you think.
Yeah,
You
right.
just, you
Well,
go.
I know my mind is, and I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Well, give us a short synopsis of what, like maybe something that stands out for you that's like really important for us to move forward. Like whether it's, a healthy these conversations, or, maybe us creating a structure or an environment for us to be successful and starting to create businesses with each other, getting into business with each other, the use of technology and how that comes in. Just maybe one thing from this side that you think that would help us moving forward.
I find this conversation, I find this question to be hard to answer in light of what's happening within the continent here. Because a part of me says we should walk away and let Africa fix itself and reclaim what is theirs, their resources, right? Let them do what they want to do with cobalt. Let them do what they want to do with their borders. Let them figure out how to build their economy. Yet, I feel like perhaps we should really we should build better infrastructure for education. Because youth want to learn. And maybe from what I'm seeing from Mbaga, specifically is that there's a need for out-of-school youth to be in school. And there's a need for orphans to be in school, to really have that opportunity to not just stop at Form 2 or Form 3, but to go all the way to Form 5 and Tertiary if they so choose to. Because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Mm-hmm. And I see so many youth that have so many skills and ideals to share, but yet feel so unable to do so because of funds. Mm-hmm. So I guess, I don't know, making sure that the opportunity for education is secured by the state and paid for by the state. And it's accurate in education. I guess that's my best answer.
It's okay. It was
this question is so much.
Yeah, it is. That was the whole point.
Shame. Yo.
No, I wanted us to start thinking. I wanted our minds to feel like, dang, it's so complex. But I wanted those thoughts to run and to think about it in that way. So that's okay. And I've already touched on, what I think in terms of that conversation, just to put it simply put. And like you were saying, first we have to build that dialogue and bounce those ideas. Because when we have this conversation, it's like, okay, now I know how you think. I know how you think. So now let's come together and figure out how can we be successful. We know the problems. We're aware of the problems. So how would this help both? How... us starting a business, or, if I send, 50 Black Americans over here and we try to do something here in Africa, how would that help Africa to be successful? So for me, I think it's just starting with that, going step by step and really breaking it down, instead of, having these big ambiguous types of goals. Let's just break it down, you simply put, and figure out how we can help each other. You got anything?
Yeah. I just want to say, if we're in a debate competition, I'd probably be like on John's bench. I agree. Because I feel like, I think that, at the end of the day, there needs to be a level of let the people do what they want with what they have. And I think there's this level of, you've got to trust when you walk into a place that the people know it better than you do. And I think that takes a lot of commitment to learning. So sometimes if you come into someone's home and you say to them, hey, what do you need? You need to let them tell you what they need. And sometimes you think you know better, and maybe you do based on your experience. But you've got to let people here decide.
Exactly.
So that's all I gotta say to
Thank
that,
you.
really.
But let me ask you. So, and I completely agree, right? Letting them be sustainable for themselves. The white savior thing.
Yeah.
But what if you're in a place where they don't even know what they want, or don't know how to get what they want? Because even personally, where I'm serving, right, you do run into people who don't even know what they want, and their minds, like we were talking about, that the cap, they're of course they're intelligent enough to figure out what that is, but maybe they do need somebody who's been somewhere else that look like them, that can encourage them and give them some empowerment and motivation to say, hey, you are great at what you're doing. You have the skills. How about, maybe you can do this, giving them some, like a refresher and some ideas. And people even from Africa that can do that as well in America, for Black Americans. So, yes, help them to figure out themselves. For me, I think, yes, help them figure it out. But sometimes you just need a little encouragement so that, all right, I know what I'm doing, but it's good to have somebody to give me some little encouragement.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's it's a really deep, big conversation. And I think that would need another hour of interrogation, like John said, because that's how do you get the legitimacy to inform my decisions? So that's a big chat, because you have this knowledge, but is it legitimate? And like,
True.
how do you know it's legitimate?
Yeah,
You know, because
I
we don't
get
have the same experiences.
Right.
But there's another
Yeah.
book I'd like to suggest just before we say bye, and it's Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Dangaremba. Gives a really good insight into sort of like the context of saviors, and the European kind of commodification in Zimbabwe, sorry. So it's a good book to read as well for understanding.
Okay.
Nice.
Thank you. Well, that was great. I had another question, but I know we got to wrap up. But it's just just to think in our minds as we move forward. You may not know all of the answers, and wanting to, I'm a big believer in collectivism and just
same.
encouraging each other and using what you can. You may not know all the answers, but I at least want to encourage you, for people who may not even know where to go with what they have, because some people are like, hey, it is what it is, so maybe some people you say, okay, we'll leave them and let them figure it out themselves, but what if they just kind of stagnant and just like, it is what it is. So
yeah, but so that's why I said it's a big conversation, because
It is,
I think
yeah.
that's a fault of capitalism. So we don't even, maybe shouldn't go there.
all right, well, I appreciate it anyway.
Yeah.
Let's get
Means we
snaps
need to
for
have another
We have
round
We do,
another
table.
one.
right?
Yes,
We should.
Yes.
Okay, well, this has been
That's an
powerful
excellent
and amazing.
Yeah.
We're officially at the conclusion, y'all,
Yeah.
of this discussion, and I just want to thank all of my participants for sharing your thoughts and being a part of this conversation that needed. I feel like this event was more than necessary to have. And for our viewers, we hope that you have enjoyed it as well. Please be a part of the conversation by commenting below, and also share this video. I know that it's a lot of information. You might need to watch it in bits and pieces, and that's okay. But please just share this information and be a part of this conversation. That's the whole point of this. And remember that sparking vital conversations, sharing and spreading the knowledge is the first step to strengthening the cultural bridge between Africans and African Americans. Again, my name is Ebony Tyson, and we are sending you love all the way from Eswatini, Africa.